The other thing is that you find that the Prophet ﷺ separated physically between the men and the women. Contemplate that the men and women are separated in the masjid. So then what about besides the masjid? And if you're not going to intermingle in the masjid, and no one really is going to take their, their leisure and their time in sweet talking a woman in the masjid, even the person of weak iman. So that if the best of the men, the Sahaba, and the best of the women were not allowed to mix in the best of the places, the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, how can we then say, well, we have pure hearts and good intentions, and we're not going to, it's okay if we do it. We have in Bukhari the hadith of Salama radiallahu anha. She described that the Prophet ﷺ would say the salam twice after the salah, and then the woman would leave and he would stay a while. So Ibn Shihab says that he thought that the Prophet ﷺ would wait a while in order for the woman be able to leave the masjid. This is just leaving the masjid. He doesn't want them to meet with the men while they're leaving. The best of men, the best of women in the best of places, yet the Prophet ﷺ is being so careful. In the book of Abu Dawood, he has a chapter entitled Insiraf al-Nisa qabla al-Rijal min as-Salah, that the departure of women before men after Salah. So Ibn Umar, the Prophet ﷺ narrates, and this narration comes from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma. He says, the Prophet ﷺ said, pointed to a door in the masjid, he said, we should leave this door for women, that women only come and leave from this door. So Nafi' says that until Ibn Umar died, he never once came or went through for this door of the masjid. Look at how the companions took to the order of the Prophet ﷺ. He never once said, well, there are no women, or it's late night, there's no women right now, I can leave from it. Never once did he enter from that door or leave from that door, because the Prophet ﷺ gave that command. Look at this description about the rows of the men and women. The Prophet ﷺ says, and this is in the book of Muslim, the best of the men's rows is the first row, and the worst is the last row. And the best of the women's rows is the last row. This is the best for the women is the last row, and the worst is the first. Why? Because the first row of the women and the last row of the men, those are the two closest rows to each other. And this is in Salah, people. This is in the masjid. And these are the worst rows because of the proximity. In another hadith narrated by Abu Dawood, the Prophet ﷺ says, give way to the women. Give way means when you're walking on the roads. Because he saw the men and women, when they leave the masjid, they walk on the road together, meaning that there's a man here in the middle of the road, a few steps back there's a woman in the middle of the road, and they're all walking home. No one's talking to anyone. Prophet ﷺ then says to the women, give way as it is not appropriate for you to walk in the middle of the road. So now just walking home, Prophet ﷺ decided that the women will walk to the side and the men will walk in the middle. And then the women narrate, look how they follow the commands of the Prophet ﷺ. The women narrate that women from that day on would walk so close to the wall that sometimes their dress would get caught, snagged on the wall. This is how they obeyed the Prophet ﷺ. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ separated between them, even just walking home from Salah. So then the excuse of the pure heart and the good intention doesn't hold. And most of the time people, when they sin, they don't have an intention to anger Allah. Like the Muslim who consumes alcohol, he doesn't sit down and say, well, my intention is to anger Allah by doing this. His intention is to, whatever they call it, get a buzz, get a ma'rif ish, all these words. So, then comes the other issue of, well, she's like a sister to me. Or she's almost a family member. The Prophet ﷺ said, beware of entering upon women. So a man asked the Prophet ﷺ, أَرَأَيْتَ الْحَمُو? He says, what about the brother-in-law? The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-hamu al-maut, al-hamu al-maut. The brother-in-law is death. The brother-in-law is death. So what does this mean? So he's telling him, even the brother-in-law. And Nawawi, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, says that the brother-in-law also would mean all of the relatives of the husband, like the nephews of the husband, the cousin of the husband, the uncle. All of them are not to enter or to stay alone with the wife, with his wife. And the Prophet ﷺ saying that the brother-in-law is death, it could mean that it could result in religious doom if some sin happens between the two. Or it could mean that actual death will happen if there's a sin, because adultery, the punishment is death. Or it could mean that the disaster will strike if the husband becomes jealous, he divorces the wife. Or that the Prophet ﷺ is using this terminology to tell you how you should be afraid of being alone with a non-mahram, or someone that you are permitted to marry. That you should fear it as you fear death, or that it is as terrible as death. So it can't be natural. And something else, being alone with like those people who say, well, we're just friends, and we sit down, we study, and it's a natural relationship. Let me tell you something. You all know this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, really, that no man sits alone with a non-mahram woman except that the shaitan is the third amongst them. So those people who say it's natural, if they could visualize, if they could actually see the shaitan, would it be a natural sitting? There's a brother over here, sister in her hijab over there, and Mr. Shaitan is sitting right here. If you took a photograph of the three of them sitting together, shaitan is sitting there, would it look like a natural, oh, very innocent, huh? What's shaitan doing sitting with you if it's innocent? He can't be in a gathering, and it's a nice, innocent gathering. So it can't be something natural.